hey, let's talk about two things. One, I want to hear this story about this other roommate who replaced Boris Zukov. And then I'd like to finish our episode today talking about Mrs. Anderson. And then we'll talk about what we got coming next week as we start talking about 1985. And, well, maybe we got a trick up our sleeve.
It's fantastic. So now I am looking for another roommate.
Boris and his 21 piece are out of town.
His bookings ran out and he left, made a friend there. And he and I don't speak, very often because our paths just don't cross. I saw him at a signing up in somewhere. He came up to the table and just for your information, because I know you'd want to hear this. I want to say it was like in Winston-Salem last year at WrestleCade.
Yeah.
WrestleCade. And which I worked for you that night and that day.
He's only 61, by the way. So he's still a relatively young man.
He was about 190 pounds. He had lost over 100 pounds. His head had shrunk up and he had returned to Jim Nelson specs.
Awesome. Good for him.
Didn't know you could do that. So that was done. So now the guy that on one of my first, it was either my first match or second match in Albertville, who cut my head off and beat me up and beat me handily, was Pat Rose.
Okay.
Now Pat Rose is working for the same company I am, and he needs a roommate. So Pat, move in. Isn't that funny how that goes full circle in that short a time?
Yeah, I guess I kind of forgot that you told us that story that he cut your head off. I know Pat because I think he has a fishing show in Chattanooga that I bought ads on like 10 years ago.
That's what I hear.
Yeah.
That's what I hear. So in those days, it's funny how you look at things, but
sure.
We went out water skiing one day. Wrestling 2 was in town for the week, just in and out. And we went over to Randy Rose, Original Midnight Express, Randy Rose, who had a condo and was living in Pensacola. He wasn't working the territory at that time or anything. And he took us out on our boat, and Wrestling 2 decided he wanted to drive. And I was not an avid water skier. So he started me, the right way. And I started up and I got about halfway up. And for some reason, he decided to ease off on the throttle. And I started to sink back down. And then he jammed it all the way up into wide open. And I came up out of that water and my legs snapped. They went apart. Boom. And I heard boom. And my tore my groin.
Oh, no.
Now, this is leading somewhere. Those injuries are bad if you've ever torn your groin. A lot of people pull their groin, and it's a bad enough injury, but I tore mine. So had I not had on a life vest, I'd have drowned. That's for sure, because, man, I was hurt. So they got me out of the water, got me back to shore and all that stuff, and I ended up having to, because the only thing you can do for injury like that is to wrap your thigh and around your waist. That's it, just to try to support it. There's nothing you can do for it. So I was showing up at the arenas with a crutch, and I would arrive there and I would get out and I would somehow make my way into the arena, because you didn't want to let the people outside before the show know you were hurt.
Right.
Automatically that's a downer. If you haven't bought a ticket yet, you're just kind of looking things over to make sure these guys actually were in town, and okay, I'll go buy my ticket now. Walk up was a big deal back then. So Pat and I are living together and everything's running smooth, and I catch a ride with him down to the building. And, man, I'm telling you, I was hurt. So I couldn't even put on a pair of shoes because I couldn't bend over and lace them. So I had a pair of house shoes, which I nicknamed my high shoes, so that when I would get tore up during this period, which you had to drink some pain reliever there a little bit.
Sure.
You could just ease your way back into a chair and just flip your feet, and those high shoes were off.
Yeah.
So I would wear them out to the car, and we would get to the arena, and I would somehow manage to get in the back door. And once the show started, somebody would go out and get my crutch, because I was legitimately on the crutch backstage. So we get to Pensacola building, and same thing, but I leave my high shoes in the car. And by then, man, I was dependent on those things. And my crutch, I get in the arena, 30 minutes or something passes. And I asked somebody to go back out to the car to get my crutch, to get my high shoes, and they walk out the door, and I'm waiting. And finally the guy comes back in about 15 minutes later, and he's like a ghost. He went, need to tell Mr. Rhodes that car's not in the parking lot. Go get Pat. Pat, your car's not, where'd you say the car's not there? What do you mean it's not there? He goes out the back door. Now I'm following him, hobbling on one leg.
Right.
Come to find out, Pat, who hadn't failed to make a payment or three, had his car repossessed.
Oh my God.
With my crutch and my high shoes. Come to find out, he had a $99 payment on this disposal car, and that's all. And at that point in time, that $99 versus me with no crutch and no high shoes was not a fair swap.
$99.
99, not 100, not 109, 99.
$99.
Rule of that story, the moral of the story, when you have a $99 car payment and you got a man with a torn groin as your roommate who has got a bad disposition anyway, make your payments.
$99.
99. So pretty soon, as you can imagine, Pat was out of there.
Yeah. Okay. So Pat's no longer your roommate either?
No longer.
So were Pat's bookings finished? Did Pat get another gig somewhere else? Did he go back home?
Yeah, he left pretty soon. And to be honest with you, I was getting close to giving Pat the heave-ho anyway, because I wanted my privacy with my new girlfriend.
There we go.